Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents. And this week I'm joined by two guests. Looking forward to a big encounter in game week 30. And both of our correspondents have doubles in game week 34. But I don't know if they're going to recommend any assets. Let's find out. Dara already shook his head. Let me introduce you to our Fulham correspondent, Dara Curran. How are you, Dara?
Very good, thanks, James.
Good man. And our West Ham United correspondent, Chris Stone. How are you, mate?
I wish I could say the same as Dara.
Oh,
Good.
all right. Chris, I want to give you massive praise for rocking up and wearing your West Ham jacket to this, mate. Especially considering we're pre-recording this on Thursday evening, and it's only less than 24 hours since the Newcastle humiliation. We'll come back onto it. But Dara, I do want to start with this Mitrovic ban. And get your opinion on this. It's 8-game ban, so he's now unavailable, I believe, till game week 36. What's that?
Back for Palace and then United, a little tasty fixture at the end.
Oh, is it game week 37 he's back, is it?
I think it's Palace is the first
no,
one.
I think it's Southampton because he's already served one, isn't it? I think it was what
he
was
served
saying.
one. Yeah, you're correct. Sorry.
So I think it's Southampton away game week 36. What's your reaction to the ban?
I think we're just going to have to accept it as it is. I mean, I don't know. The FA seemed a bit mental if they're looking for more games. I don't know where that's come from, but I can't really complain. I mean, it's 8 games. It's a lot of games. It's a lot of games.
It is.
If it serves as a benchmark and a watershed moment, that's what we're saying.
Yeah,
is it? And you can't touch a referee, and you can't swear at a referee, and whatever. And going forward, other teams will have the same. It looks as though something's going to happen for us because it was probably about 3 players that touched the ref in that game. If that's what carries on, and that's what has to happen to eradicate this, then so be it. But if it's just a moment where they go, right, we're going to crack the whip, and then nothing happens beyond that point, like another Umar Nias who got retrospective action for diving and no other player ever after that got it, then that's bullshit.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it wasn't just the fact that he touched a referee, which was obviously wrong, and that's what got him sent off in the first instance.
Yeah, it's a red card. I can't argue with it.
No, you can't. I think it was then the reaction on top of that as well. The fact that he was very intimidating in his face. I think if it gets to a stage where you're making a referee have to walk backwards, you're in excess of the boundary, basically, right? If the referee stops, it's going to be a collision. So I feel like it went a bit too far. My comment at the time was, if it finishes this season, it finishes season. But I do absolutely agree, and I totally respect the frustration amongst Fulham fans that, right, okay, that's what it is. But if this happens again, it's got to be like this for X, Y, Z as well.
Interrogating every incident for the rest of the season.
Well, they've massively got to stamp down on something. But the only thing I'd say to counter it and say, like, are others having similar suspensions? Has anyone received a yellow or red card and continued to react in that way that's made a referee actually take backward steps? I couldn't think of an example recently, and that's why it was more.
Not of late, but then you've got the likes of Roy Keane on the punditry back in ITV, given all this, like when he did exactly the same thing, and United fans criticising Mitrovic when they absolutely loved Roy Keane for doing exactly that, for being exactly that player. So you can't have it both ways.
Listen, what Mitrovic did wasn't worse than what Roy Keane did. I want to say back in 2000 probably, but it was also 23 years ago.
I think he obviously deserves a ban and lengthier than 3 games. That's fine. We can take that. But it turned into a bit of a witch hunt online where you've got all these talk sport and the likes talking about Cantona kung fu kicking a fan, and like Di Canio got 8 games for pushing a ref. 3 games was for the sending off that he actually got in the game. The other 8 were for pushing the ref. So if we're comparing it with Di Canio, was it worse or the same or less?
Yeah, but then again, I don't think we can compare something that happened. What year did that? That must have been 1999, I think.
It's a long time ago. Look, it's its own incident, and we don't talk about Bruno. Let's just leave that as its own little separate thing.
Yeah.
But I think in each case is going to be, there's different severity. You can't compare the two, obviously. Like the aggression that he showed was completely different to other incidents. But if we're going to say you can't even lay a hand on a referee, then that's what it has to be, and you have to enforce that going forward.
You can't. That can't be acceptable. But I know what you're saying. The Bruno one at Liverpool and stuff. I agree. Should have gone.
But the Forest one, it's the same referee, and at least 3 players have touched him, and nothing. Not even yellow.
How did they touch him? I haven't seen that incident.
No. Well, if we're saying you can't touch a referee at all, that's what I'm saying. Like, because that was bandied around, that thing. You can't lay a hand on a referee.
Yeah,
obviously there's different forces and different whatever.
Yeah, it's the manner of doing it. Like I could put my hand on your shoulder, for example, and I'd not pull, but it might be I'm putting my arm around you. Even you're not going to send someone off for that. We understand the difference.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, start of the season, they said they were going to stamp out all these players swarming the referee, and like only the captain should come over and all that sort of stuff. It happens every game.
Yeah, something. I think it's a wider conversation which we don't need to have now, but like. Exactly what you said is key. It's got to be the start of something.
It has to be consistent. That's all we really want. So if this is the benchmark, then great. Let's continue to roll out yellow cards and red cards and whatever.
Chris, neutral opinion on it?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit over the top. I think, like you said, though, it's the more the bit after rather than him. Because to be fair, him touching the referee wasn't that severe. It wasn't, wasn't overly aggressive there, but I think he was just so in his face, wasn't he, at that point? And like you say, he's backing away. And then I think you've got the social media aspect now, because I know like Ticanio one's a bit of a joke because he hardly, sort of like put a thing on him. He sort of he took about.
No, I mean that is pushing the referee though. That is worse than what Mitrovic did.
I think though it's the culmination of everything. It's not just him being sent off for pulling the referee back or pushing the referee or whatever you want to call it. It's because the 2 red cards had come before it, and he's obviously completely lost the head. But if that was just him being sent off for pulling back the referee, I don't think he probably would have given the same reaction. I think it's because there's just 3 red cards in the space of 40 seconds. It's just like, what's after happening here?
Yeah, but I mean, the William one wasn't by law of football. Wasn't it in question, really, right?
No, by the law of the game.
Yeah, it's harsh, but it's the law of the game.
I think, I thought that double jeopardy thing had gone, but when I read back on the rules, it is actually the way it is. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's intent in it, but at the end of the day, he does deny a goal scoring opportunity. So,
but my argument always on that has been, unless you can prove it's deliberate, and that's what they've deemed it's deliberate. You haven't denied a goal scoring opportunity because you got a penalty. It's not like it's gone out for a corner and that's it, and you don't give the penalty. You haven't actually denied a goal scoring opportunity. That was the whole thing with double jeopardy. Was okay, it's an honest attempt to win the ball, for example. It's a penalty, but not a red card because you haven't actually denied the goal scoring chance. There's still I don't know what statistic is, 75% chance of conversion. Yeah. Same here. In that one, you could probably say is denial with 99% goal. So he's increased his chances, maybe, and I guess that's how they look at it with handballs on the line, unfortunately. But yeah, it seems
at the end of the day,
that punishment's harsh.
We shot ourselves in the foot. We handed the game to United. Like, they didn't win it because they were the better team on the day. They won it because we absolutely imploded and handed them.
No, because it's worth saying, Manchester United away, FA Cup quarterfinal, you were in control, right?
I mean, De Gea pulled off a ridiculous save to keep it at 1-0, and then within a couple of minutes, they went down the other end. And that's just turned on that incident, but it is what it is.
Did that finish the season effectively?
I think so. Yeah. I think we were all kind of dreaming of Wembley at getting there again, but yeah, it's a little bit of a sucker punch. Like, we haven't the previous games in the league prior to that, we weren't really playing well. I think since probably Chelsea, and that was probably like we put in a big effort in that game, and it's a bit of a sucker punch, but it is what it is. We'll soldier on.
Chris, certainly your season's not finished yet. Do you want to start with that shambles on Wednesday night and dissect it however you want and just say how you feel?
It was just shit. There's no other word. It was so frustrating because it was we actually started well, and I jokingly said like
About 2 minutes.
Yeah, in 2 minutes. I know 5 minutes we conceded a goal. So that's put it into context. But I said, I said to someone in front of me who's like on the season ticket, I said ironically, we probably had more chances in that 2 minutes than we've had in some halves in some games. But it was a bit sarcastic. But we had created chances in games. But yeah, it was just a soft goal. I mean, the trouble was obviously when they show it on like the highlights, I don't always show it. It was Kerr who made an error. He wasn't really under pressure. He completely misjudged the header. He was sort of caught in two minds what to do. Headed it out for a corner, gave away a corner. Obviously, that led to the goal. And then, yeah, they're just, calamity of errors really in the goals. It's frustrating as well because we didn't, to be honest, when we were 2-0 down as well, their heads looked like they were just down. I mean, Rice tried and he was trying to pick them up and that kind of thing. And Bowen did all right. He didn't have a terrible game. But once you give 2 goals away to a side like Newcastle, who don't always, I'm not being funny, you don't expect to lose 5-1 to Newcastle, not because they're not a good side, but because they tend to be quite tight. They'll score a couple of goals. And, that's pretty much, that's it. But we just gifted them the game. Really, was with stupid individual errors. To be fair, I think Moyes was all right after the game in the sense that at least he didn't make the mistake of criticising the crowd because even when they were 2-0 down, they were still trying to get behind the team. Guess because it's quite early, but it was just such a disappointing result overall. Really, there was nothing really to take out of it. I just think that Moyes is. I don't know what he's doing sometimes. And it's sometimes the things he says. I wouldn't say he was criticising Ings, but he was sort of kind of saying at the weekend, Ings isn't as effective as a lone striker. Then why are you playing him as a lone striker? if you're making the decision, you're picking the team, and then you're not actually having a go at him, but you're saying he's not really good as a lone striker. He's not a 19-year-old kid who's just come through the ranks and he's just developing. He's been around quite a while. Everyone knows how he plays. You don't necessarily have to have 2 strikers, but you've got to get people close to him to support him. And Bowen can do that. But it's just the trouble is I think we go for one game. We're living by each game because 2 or 3 games ago it was like this is Moyes' last chance. He wins it, and then
that's happened a few times, hasn't it?
Bad results.
Southampton, Everton. There's another one I can't remember off the top of my head as well. And it was like if you lose this one, he's toast. And again, we should timestamp this and say we are pre-recording on Thursday night just in case something happens tonight. But we don't think it is, do we?
No, again, he's living by game to game almost. The border kind of almost. I don't think they want to do anything until the end of the season, and I don't think they would have probably done anything at the end of the season if we was a little bit more comfortable. But I think they're going to have to bow to some sort of pressure. It reaches a point where I don't know. Sometimes you just need a change just for the sake of it, but you just need the change, regardless of whether he's been good or whatever Moyes can or can't do. I think sometimes you need it. We've got quite attacking players, but we're trying to play in a defensive way, and we're playing worse than when we had maybe some not so good players when you think of some of the people that we've signed, and that's what I think is frustrating. We've signed players that you think would improve us attacking wise, but yet we're not really playing in an attacking way, and you feel like the kind of shackles are on the players. They just don't seem to be enjoying it. They don't want to seem to be there. They're going through the motions. You can see it when they play. They're not. Some of them, but you can't play with 3 or 4 people having a go, being, I wouldn't say at the top of their game, but being asset, as Souness likes to say, and the others not, because it's you've got 11 people on the pitch, and if you're at this level, if you're not pulling in the same direction and not giving the same amount of effort and don't have that same belief, then it's not going to end well.
You're going to hit a wall, mate. if that's
exactly.
where it's at. Would you sack him?
I think anyone would do better. If I'm
Anyone?
honest, pretty much. I think
Mark,
just that lift. I think that just that lift. I mean, the trouble is they talk about temporary someone
I'd
coming
love
into
to
his
see
breath.
Nathan Jones take over yours for the rest of the season, mate.
Yeah,
Scott Parker, I think he's free.
Dara selling you Scott Parker. You could see that though, Dara, couldn't you? Don't rule it out, mate.
funny enough, his name has been mentioned.
It will be.
It's yeah. I don't know. I mean, if people say Moyes is the right man, not the right man. If you were in that position, he's one of the names on the list. But we're just not going anywhere. And the trouble was I saw funny enough, I saw something online. I meant to screenshot it, but from I think it's from December 2021, showed all the teams that we've actually beaten, and they're not good teams. It's like Villa when
Dara took that offensively.
They're not where we should be in terms of, we've invested, we've improved in the squad, all of those sorts of things. You shouldn't be struggling, and it's not just about how many points you got, because I know we sort of touched on it before we started, but there is 8 teams down there, but just not being as bad as maybe 3 other teams isn't really where people want to be. Everyone goes through a bad patch, but it's more than that. It's just the way they're playing. It's Moyes. He just seems so stuck in his ways. It's almost a weakness now, rather than being, sticking to his philosophy. He hasn't changed. I mean, interesting. I went to like one of these events things, and I think it was Carl Cole who did it, and it wasn't that he said anything bad against Moyes or anything like that, because obviously they're not going to know, are they? He's involved with it, but he was talking generally, but it is obviously about West Ham as well. But saying that football changes, and you've got to adapt, which is kind of obvious, but he probably hasn't. He's probably trying to do the same things he was when we were doing things we were successful. But I don't even think he's doing that. I don't know. I just think he's trying to. Some things he's tried to change, and then if they don't work, he tries to go back to type. But then you've got different players now, and it's not the same players that you had when you took over. You've got to play to their strengths, and I think we've got the potential to be a much more attacking side.
You'd sack him.
I would.
Dara, neutral opinion?
Not sure. I don't know. Who's available? Who would you get in? That's actually
the name that keeps getting mentioned, whether it would be permanent or temporary, I would probably agree or disagree, Chris, is Rafa Benitez.
He's been mentioned, yeah. I don't know how serious that, but I wouldn't be excited about it. That's the other problem. It's not so much about who we could get, because there's always someone you can get, but it's who they actually would appoint, and that's my reservation. I'm not sure that Benitez would come in and be this saviour. I know.
What is there? 10 games left? Is that right?
I think it's less.
You've got 10, Chris.
Yeah. So it's 10 games. I mean, it's one of those. It's going to be a hindsight job, isn't it? If you don't stay up, then people will say you should have got rid of him. The other problem is that I think I couldn't say all of them, but a lot of the other teams around us have got, maybe bar 1 or 2, have got rid of their managers, and they have seen a bit of an uptick, but none of them have really kind of kicked on massively.
No, I mean, Palace have changed, but I think I always thought they'd be all right. Well. Yeah, I mean, you make a case, and it's not meant disrespectfully, Dara, but the 2 hardest games Palace have got left is you away and my team away in terms of on paper. Other than that, we've got all the teams basically in and around them. Those are the only 2 teams they play in. I was going to say top half. You're 11th at the moment, Dara. So Tottenham away is the only game they've got left against a top half team, and they won't be shitting themselves about that either. But the others, take Wolves, Lopetegui, had a bit of a bounce, but they're still struggling for goals a little bit again now. They might be about to lose Podence for a number of games as well.
I guess for me, the timing doesn't seem right. Like if you were going to change the manager, you would have done it over the international break. You would have given somebody a bit of time to work with the players, whereas if you do it after this weekend, how quickly are they going to bet in? How these tactics?
I think West Ham taking 3 points this week wasn't a disaster. You couldn't afford to lose the Southampton game and lose to Newcastle. That would have been bad. I think it's not the fact that you lost to Newcastle, right? Most of us have done that this year.
Yeah.
It's the manner. The manner. You don't get beat like that. You know the old joke, West Ham get battered everywhere they go, but you don't. You get beat most places you go, but you don't get battered by anyone.
No.
And so that was really out of character on Wednesday night. And that's what's really alarming. Like you said, even at 2-0, you could see their heads have gone down. And it's not like you don't have good players like Rice. No, Rice and Paquetá in the centre of the pitch should be able to compete with Newcastle's. But they've got more energy. And they're probably being coached a lot better at the moment. It's concerning. You've got 10 games left, Chris. What's alarming, though, is that 6 of them are away, which is also the same number of points that you've got away from home, which is a staggering statistic. And I look at these
away from home.
I look at these away games, and they're not a terrible set. But right now, do I think you get anything at Fulham on Saturday? Not if Fulham play properly. Bournemouth away. They look one of the better sides down there at the moment, actually. Look capable of scoring goals. Palace away. Tricky. You're capable. City away right off. Brentford away. If you don't go there with the right mentality, you get beat. Leicester away. I mean, 2 teams who are too good to go down. We'll find out in game week 38 if you're both in the shit. And the home games, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Leeds. That's the concern.
That is a concern.
Do I think you're one of the worst 3 teams? No, but it's got to a stage. I've always maintained, and I still think you'll be all right. But when I break down the fixtures individually, I begin to struggle a bit.
Yeah,
and that's the concern.
That is true. I think in a way, in theory, I think the away games might help us because I think there'll be the sort of support you get away they don't tend to go against the team as much, unless it's really, really, really bad.
They won't for these home games because you've got big. It's worth saying that because they're big opposition in the home games, that also will help the atmosphere because the crowd will understand. Right, they've got to help the team today because the opponents are of superior with respect.
Yeah, no, that is true. I mean, the Leeds game's big, but it could be that we've lost the away games and the Leeds game is not, is a token gesture, as it were, even if we win it. It's a struggle because I think the biggest problem we've got is that we're creating enough chances to score, but we don't put them away. And you feel that if we concede a goal, then the team almost feel, oh, shit, we've got to score 2 goals here to get a win. And they don't really believe that they can score 2 goals in a game.
If you're going to make mistakes like you made Wednesday night defensively.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even I know Aguerd's taking a lot of criticism for the 3rd goal, rightly so. Fabianski should do better on a couple of them. Even the way Zouma gets beat on the 5th by Joel Linton and his awareness on Wilson on the 1st goal. Individual mistakes all over the place. Dara, pre-season, most would have been tipping you to be involved at this in the bottoms. You're probably quite nice to sit above it from a neutral perspective.
I think everybody from the correspondents probably tipped Fulham to be in the bottom 3.
So revel in it, mate.
Yeah, our season's pretty much done.
He's like, I'm not doing it anymore. Fuck him.
No, but I mean, let's like Europe was a bit of a pipe dream. Let's be honest, we were floating around there. But you look at the other teams that are there and thereabouts, like your Brentfords and your Brightons, have a much better chance than we have. This is our first season. If we actually got European football, it would probably be to our detriment. I guess the only thing, if we did get some sort of European football, and I think it's beyond us now at this point, like Liverpool and Chelsea are going to improve next year, so there's probably 0 chance of us getting Europe, even if we build on what we've got this season.
No, but it's difficult because, listen, you could end up having a worse league position next year quite comfortably. You could finish 12th, right? that's not a bad season for you next year. With respect, how many
No,
teams have we?
How
many teams have we seen
fun,
come
yeah.
up and then that second season, mate?
Quite a lot, yeah.
So it's about stabilizing the club. You yo-yoed, right? What you actually want is a period of stability, then growth. Which, being as a London club as well, there's certainly every capability to do that in forthcoming years. I mean, it's probably just a bit disappointing. Reflect on the 2 performances against Chelsea. And even the fact you won at Brighton with that late goal. And at the point that you beat Brighton that night, I'm pretty sure you went in sort of 5th, 6th or so.
It was 6th. I think there might have been like a point or maybe goal difference behind Newcastle or something at that period of time.
And I think there was at that point, there was real realistic expectations. What happens if you win these next 3 games? West Ham at home, Everton away, Leeds at home.
The next 3 or 4 are probably like our better fixtures. I mean, it could happen, but I don't think our goal difference is good enough. Even if the other teams around us drop points, I think by the end of the season we'll still kind of be around 10th to 12th-ish.
But below the top 4, no one's performing well enough on a consistent basis.
Nobody's pulling away. Yeah.
Look at what Villa have done recently, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like 5th is not beyond Villa. I think 4th probably is, but 5th, if they maintain their form and where they're running at, yeah, why not? Because everyone else above them, bar Brighton, basically, and they've got games in hand, has been falling over themselves. If you can win the next 3,
we really need to refocus again. I think we could have put the game to bed against Bournemouth last week in the first half and just didn't show up. Well, they came into it towards the end of the first half. They had some chances, and I just thought if we had got that second goal, it would have killed the tie. And then awful. Like I think the whole back 4 were just really, really bad.
With that in mind, are you on the beach then?
Hard to say. I think we've kind of been flagging a little bit, maybe because we don't rotate as much as other teams do. It's caught up, and there's been games previously where we haven't played very well, but it's kind of been maybe 1 or 2 players who've been below par, and then others have stepped up to kind of just give that energy or that bit of dynamism and get us over the line for a draw or a win or whatever it might have been. And the last few, there's been more than that 1 or 2 players. There's been 3 or 4 who've been way off the pace.
Why do you think it is?
It's just not enough to carry it. Not sure. It could be tiredness. It could be just
Is it a combination of key men missing out as well that reflect on some of the recent games? So
I mean,
Brentford away and Arsenal at home.
Every game he's been out, we've been absolutely hockey.
But we love him. I mean, he's a great player.
It's a very small sample size, but you have to take it for what it is.
He's been the best ball-winning midfielder in the league this year. That's a fact.
Vinicius isn't Mitrovic. So
no. In fairness, who in the bloody league is? I bet you if Mitrovic played for West Ham, they wouldn't be in the trouble they're in.
That'd be true. He would definitely. He's a sort of bulldozer, isn't he?
I reckon if he was watching you play last night, he would have been licking his lips at the prospect of playing this weekend. Because I reckon he would have cleaned up.
He pretty would be.
Nobody tracking players. It looked so easy. It looked.
Make him look like Haaland.
I was asked, Dara. I was asked. It was a question we had on yesterday's pod that I did with Andy about a 2-week punt. Pick a player for a 2-week punt. And the first name I said was Soloman.
It might not be the worst in the world. I think if you were to pick anybody from Fulham, it kind of has to be a Soloman or a Pereira, just because of the value. I don't know if I could advise anybody pumping more money in. I guess Vinicius probably is the obvious choice to start up front. However, I wonder, did they play somebody like Soloman or Dan James or Bobby Reid as the number 9 just to give us something different? If it is Soloman, then the next couple of games, if he's starting up front, it wouldn't be a bad shout at all.
That's interesting. So you don't even think Vinicius is locked in to play necessarily then?
We did test it. We did play Bobby Reid at one of the games. Can't remember. It was around about Christmas time, December, January sort of time, and it didn't quite work for
Was
us.
it when? No, Vinicius played at home to Chelsea, didn't he? When Mitrovic had the suspension.
Yeah, he got the goal. He'll go down in history for that goal. But he was basically anonymous against Bournemouth last week. I don't know. He maybe I don't think he seems isolated at times, and then other times he's kind of making these runs. He doesn't seem in sync with the rest of the team. He's making runs where he almost should be like standing still and just waiting for the ball to come to him, and the game just bypasses him quite a lot of the time.
It's got to be an adjustment to playing with Mitrovic, and I think Fulham went for him because he has similar traits to Mitrovic. One of the things I said to you earlier in the season when we played you game week 6 was that Vinicius looks a lot more powerful than the player I'd seen at Tottenham. Looked like he bulked up a bit. But then I guess if you're young and energetic like he is, but quite bulky, if you don't get a run of games, you're not getting into any rhythm, are you? And players are so used to.
I wonder whether we just stick with it and just give him these games to kind of just try to do something.
Is he permanent or on loan?
No, I think he's alone.
Have you heard any if they're likely to make that permanent or?
I don't know.
Because that's a factor, isn't it? If we get into a stage where realistically we might be getting to a place here where Fulham don't have too much to play for, if they're not intending to keep the player, why play him?
Yeah, it's true. It could. I mean, it could be an opportunity to experiment and do something different, like I said, and play somebody with a bit of pace that can get in behind the defense rather than Vinicius.
What would you prefer, you personally?
I think I'd like to see Vinicius get a couple of games. As you say, he hasn't had a consistent run, so it'd be nice to back him a little bit and the fans get behind him.
I'm thinking, I look at the next two fiction. I think of playing against centre halves like Zouma, Aguerd, and Tarkowski and Michael Keane. He'd probably quite enjoy it.
You never know. I mean, the thing is, I just saw the movement of Callum Wilson to get away from the defender on the first goal. Like, I know that the defending was a bit statuesque, but I don't see Vinicius making those kind of runs. And against Bournemouth in the first half, Robinson put some unbelievable balls into the box, and Tim Ream put another ball into the box at one point. There's nobody on the end of it. If that was Mitrovic that was there, he would have been jumping at that opportunity. It's being able to read these crosses and being in the right place, and I'm not sure if Vinicius is really on that same wavelength.
Looking ahead to game week 34, but you've both got a double, and they're obviously tough doubles. I mean, especially for you, Dara, Liverpool away. Which is preceded by Manchester City at home. But the forwards in that week, this is why I think Vinicius' name will come up with Mitrovic ruled out to at least 36. The forwards who've got doubles that week, not great. You've got Ferguson at Brighton, who obviously is a very good asset, but certainly is not locked to play in the team. Liverpool, Núñez at the moment. You've seen what's happened this week. No guarantee that he plays twice. City, Haaland speaks for itself, obviously. United, their forwards and midfielder in the game basically at the moment. And then there's your team, Chris. I mean, if I said to you right now, buy Danny Ings or Carlos Vinicius, what would you say to me?
Don't make the same mistake I did when I brought him in this week.
Chris, did you not hear what I said on the end of the last Clash to Correspondents?
No.
I said Chris Stone's on next week's Clash to Correspondents, and he's going to come on and tell you why you all shouldn't have bought West Ham players.
It's the only one I brought up. So the reason why I did it, well, A, because I'm in his ear. and second, I took out Tony. So it was a bit of a swing, but I just thought I took the gamble that, okay, Tony might get a booking. I know that I think there was a thing saying that I think it was Michael Oliver, who was the ref, didn't give that many yellow cards away from home or something. But either way, I took that little bit of a gamble. We used the one gamble, but it didn't work out. But yeah, the trouble is, especially after what's going on. I mean, he scored a couple of goals in one of the games, Ings, but he's a little bit isolated.
As you said.
And he's not it's not that he's doing anything wrong as such. It's just that I don't know. It's almost like you're drifting from one game to the next. So there's very few players who you would pick, and then the ones that you maybe would look at who are capable of playing well, who play every week, maybe like Bowen. It's just too expensive. You're not going to spend 8 million on a West Ham player. It's very so it's difficult. It's
What's your plan with Ings now then? You keeping or you selling?
I'll probably keep him because he's so cheap and he's on the bench. I don't think there's an obvious.
Who's your forwards, just out of interest?
I've got Kane and Watkins.
So no Haaland.
No Haaland, no. And then because the midfield, I've got Martinelli, Maddison, Rashford, McAllister, and Matoma. So depending on what, it's a little bit of kind of game by game, but I've still got my wild card, so I could make a few changes that way.
No. Having a West Ham player would make me feel like wanting to use that quite quickly, to be honest. So you're not thinking about I take it you haven't got the money to go Ings to Haaland then?
No, I have. I could do that, but then I've got a benching problem in some of the games because I've got.
Yeah, not having Haaland might be a big one.
Yeah, it might be a big one. But, yeah, he's got to be.
When you bought Ings, were you thinking this is 1 week? Because I think it's perfectly reasonable, by the way. Like if I'd have free hitted last week, I think I'd have gone with him because the 2 home games. But were you thinking this is 1 week, or were you thinking, oh, there's a double now, there's another double in 34. I'm going to put my hat on him and hold him through?
No, I wasn't thinking the double. I was thinking, okay, we've got the double. Also, then got Fulham away, who's potentially could get something there. But then, yeah, I wasn't thinking beyond that. It was more one. It was more for the double, a little bit of a punt. And it went horribly wrong.
But no, I get it. But then it could have worked where because of those forwards, like I said, the limited 34. I bet a few people end up with Haaland and Alvarez, in that week because there's not huge options for double game week 34 for forwards. And that's why to go back to what we were saying with Dara is why Vinicius, Andy brought him up on the podcast yesterday about potentially considering him further down the line. And actually from an FPL perspective, Dara, when you look at your fixtures, we've mentioned obviously West Ham at home, Everton away, and then Leeds at home. Villa away is tough, but it's a rough week for FPL managers because there's a lot of competitive fixtures. Then you got City Liverpool, it's part of a double. Then Leicester, then Southampton, where Mitrovic is back, and Palace. And Manchester United away last day of the season might have a Europa League final 3 days later, and they might not give a shit about playing you. You could near enough have green fixtures nearly every week.
Potentially. It's one of the easier run-ins. I think Palace are the only ones that have, like, on paper, the easier run-in. I'm just not convinced by Vinicius, to be honest. There was a poll in a chat group that I'm in recently to see how many goals they reckon he'll score by the end of the season, and most people picked like 1 or 2. So if you're looking at Liverpool and City in that double game week, I don't think he's probably scoring in one of those.
If he did play every week, let's just say he played up to 36. If he plays every game and Pereira and Soloman play every game over that period, who do you think scores the most out of the 3 of them in terms of just goals?
I'd probably just lean ever so slightly towards Pereira, just because I think Soloman has a bit of competition from Willian.
Okay. Who's obviously back from a ban himself now.
Yeah.
But I feel like the last time he was available in the league, he went Decordova-Reid and Soloman, didn't he? Soloman feels like he had such a good run of form. He kind of basically picked himself for a while there, didn't he? Yeah. Was it 5 in a row he scored in?
Yep. 5 in a row.
Okay, so he's blanked in the last 2 in the league, but what super value at 4.9, and obviously Pereira is down to 4.3, the majority of us owned earlier in the season. Are either of these guys likely to be making their way into your team, Dara?
Probably not. I don't have bench boost left, but if I did, then I'd probably consider one of them for that double game week.
Therefore, you're talking about having a regular bench option, maybe. So do you go the cheaper one? Just go back to Pereira.
That's why I'd be going cheap.
And I guess it's important to say, I guess in Mitrovic's absence, he'll be back on the pens, will he?
I'd imagine so, yeah. I think he is.
Would you consider any defensive assets, even if it was short term? I'm thinking of an example, Dara, where, say, I've got Luke Shaw. Let's just say we haven't got the news at this point, but say Shaw's out for 2 weeks or so, and I wanted to dip in into something and dip back. Consider your boys? Or is it too much concern that there's not enough to play for at this stage?
I think that's the thing. Like that on paper, easier fixtures are the next 3 to 4. But you almost want to see what happens at the weekend before you jump into it. I kind of wouldn't want to commit at this point in time.
Robinson and Tete both 4.4. Would you have a preference if someone asked you?
Absolutely, Tete.
Yeah, same as what we said previously.
Yeah, same. I think Robinson's, I don't know, he's just kind of, he doesn't have that attacking output, but he's also just had a couple of brain farts in the last couple of games. Like why he didn't just hook that ball off the line against Bournemouth, I have no idea. And then he made a massive mistake against Arsenal as well. I mean, I know he was kind of marking a couple of players there as well, but he was just looking at the ball.
Yeah. I didn't cover himself in any glory, that Solanke goal at the weekend either. Leno, I think he's very interesting though.
Could be.
Yeah, I'm thinking of people. Obviously, Lampard's taking the Chelsea job. We don't know at the time whether it's going to be kind of Kepa or Mendy. Mendy could come back in. And if you've got that paired up with Danny Ward, for example, suddenly you're in a position from having what looked like kind of an ideal wild card 2 goalkeepers to not having either. And I think Leno, because of your fixtures in the singles, plus the fact 34, look at what David Raya did against Brighton last week. For a goalkeeper, the fixtures don't matter so much. He'll make saves.
I think you could carry him through. Yeah. You could probably bench him in the games you don't want to bench him and carry him through.
Yeah, I think you could make a choice. But I think for those who have still got that bench boost in their pocket and have got a goalkeeper problem right now, he'd be right near the top of the list of goalkeepers you'd
especially
consider,
if you don't want to pump too much money into it as well. If you want to bring back Haaland and whoever else, you've obviously got you're investing your money somewhere else.
It's not just Chris as well. It's not just the likes of Ward and Kepa. There's a few we know gambled on Areola as well, having obviously got in the team prior to the international break. Were you surprised to see Fabianski come straight back in? Because the message once he was fit from West Ham fans seemed to be he prefers Fabianski, he'll always play him, but he didn't cover himself in any glory Wednesday night either.
No, I mean, funny enough, he made a number of good saves actually before that.
He did.
Yeah, he did. But like you say, that was a pretty glaring error, really. That was just complete stupidity. I wasn't that surprised, no. I mean, I was surprised he brought him straight back. I thought he might have played in one of, like maybe say in the Newcastle game or rather than the first game. But yeah, it wasn't that much of a surprise. Nothing against David. Pick the players that he picks, and they're pretty much guaranteed to play come what may, really.
Yeah, I think that's annoyed West Ham fans a lot as well. He's got his favourites, hasn't he? Who would you prefer to play in goal, just in a word?
I haven't got anything against Fabianski. They both got their strengths and weaknesses. Neither one of them is a standout. They're both either one of them are both decent keepers for a club of our sort of stature. But I think the fact that Fabianski I'm not sure he's out of contract. I think he's out of contract this year because they gave him the extension. You would think, what signal does that give to Areola? Why is he going to stick around? So then you could be the situation in the summer, Fabianski, or they let him go, or he leaves, and Areola thinks, well, I'm not honestly, I'm not going to stay, and then you've got an even bigger problem because you've lost 2 keepers.
Yeah, I think the problem is for those who've gone for West Ham assets at the moment is people want to move towards sort of City, Liverpool, those coming up with the doubles who are more expensive than the West Ham assets. I'm finding that the West Ham assets, and I think I might find this with the Brentford, with Rico Henry as an example, can end up staying for a while. Because actually, I've never got the luxury of actually moving it on. If you've got like a Zouma and a Luke Shaw, subject to what Luke Shaw's injury is, if you want to buy Haaland this week as well, suddenly it's like, oh my God, there's 2 problems. When am I going to move on a a Zouma. Would you advise people, Chris, to get on with it and get rid, or is someone like Zouma absolutely fine to keep part as a rotation if you're a defender short at the moment?
I would say if you find a better option, which isn't that difficult, I would get rid because most people aren't going to have them. So you've got to look at the balance of probabilities. How likely is it we keep a clean sheet? Can you predict when we get a clean sheet? Will we score a lot of goals? And that's everything's anti-FPL in that respect, isn't it? They could do it, but it's not even the flip of a coin. You basically you're putting them in, you're taking a gamble. So it may pay off, and if it pays off, you'd be thinking, oh, what a brilliant move. But there's a million better options, better teams, better players. They're they're either not safe in terms of they're just not players that would be guaranteed to start because there's always someone else there, or they've always got that risk of an injury. So you've got that aspect as well. And I think whenever we have a good season, the next season when we're priced higher, it's never good to pick the West Ham players because I don't know, they're good for when they're at a reasonable price. But when you start getting up, I know obviously like Zouma, there's not a lot, but you think how many 4.5 million defenders there are in a game, there's a ton of them. So you have to go with
there is, but you don't necessarily want to take a -4 to move from a Zouma to a Tete, for example. Like, I think for free, if you had that luxury short term, you'd maybe consider it. -4, you're not doing that, are you, Dara?
No, it's not worth it.
No. Dara, this 34 double, City at home, Liverpool away. If I said to you were there now and it was happening now and you were free hitting, do you think you'd have any Fulham?
Probably not.
Chris, you've also got City in that double. Even worse, it's away. And you also go to Crystal Palace. If that was right now and you were free hitting, do you think you'd have any West Ham?
Absolutely not.
So we've only got 6 teams with a double in 34. And the correspondents are both saying, yeah, something else, guys. Which is interesting for the bench boosters. Because I think when you start comparing, say, Zouma in 34 versus a Botman who's got a Southampton at home, or a Danny Ings versus a Tony who's got Forest at home, actually there's a number with single game weeks who actually look a little bit better. But I would say with a caveat though, Dara, that for your team, like I said, the fixtures on either side of the double, bar the trip to Villa in 33 will be tough. It's good. And if people want to go free up front, like I might get stuck with Tony Watkins Haaland up front, and therefore a Pereira or a Soloman possibly appeals a little bit more. But then ironically, I'd probably only start him when you've got City and Liverpool in a double, just because it's a double, and you're probably open for an assist and 7 points or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's probably single game week players who will probably outscore a lot of the Fulham players in that week. I'd probably only look at it if I was bench boosting.
What's the ambition to close, Dara? Is it to finish above Chelsea?
Yeah, that'd be ideal, wouldn't it? I mean, I guess at this stage, it's probably top 10 is what we're trying to aim for. Whether that's achievable or not, I'm not sure. But with Liverpool and Chelsea just faltering every other week, then it's probably still realistic.
Yeah, it's worth saying Brentford are about to come into
Really
across the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, your fixtures are much better than theirs for the rest of this season. So, I mean, they've been very consistent this year, but I wouldn't rule out catching them. Villa have also still got some tough games to come as well. But if you end up finishing 11th, mate, still a brilliant season.
Absolutely take it, yeah.
Absolutely. Chris, you staying up?
Yes, but not in any blaze of glory, as it were, or sort of a strong finish. I think we probably will, but it'd be with a bit of luck.
Who do you think will go?
Oof. It's so tough because there's any one of 8 teams. You always think there's be someone who's up there who's going to sit down. That probably would have been Palace, but I think they'll probably be right now. And they've got Hudson here stabilised them. Say Southampton, Bournemouth, possibly. I just think they played well in games and then they've lost. So I think though they're showing the right spirit, maybe they won't get the results. And then possibly even Leeds. but it's so close. It's so close. It's so close.
That'll be Andy Martin straight in your DMs there, mate. Dara, you got 3 you think will go?
I think Southampton, Brentford.
Brentford?
Sorry, not Brentford, Bournemouth. Southampton.
I know you dislike them, Dara, but that's harsh.
Chelsea.
I think Southampton, Bournemouth, and Forest, but it wouldn't be the 3 that I'd prefer to go down. But that's who I think we're gonna.
Well, I've got to ask the follow-up question. Which 3 do you want to go down?
I probably want the 3 that are probably gonna be the strengthened the most next year if they stay up. So someone like Everton. Who else?
Ain't got no money, mate.
Yeah, but it'll absolutely destroy him if they go down, won't it? Probably like a Wolves and who else? Leeds, maybe.
West Ham?
West Ham, even, yeah. West Ham.
Get rid of him, mate.
Yeah. Okay, I guess who I'd ideally want. I mean, at the end of the day, I want teams that are weaker than us next season. And if someone like West Ham is going to improve for next season, if they go down this year, great, absolutely brilliant.
Chris, you know I don't want you to go down.
And I don't mean that in like
no, it's a common sense thing to say.
No, I want you to be 17th and be shit. I don't want you to go down. No, I'd miss the 2 games on the calendar, mate. I'd miss it.
Yeah, that would be a miss.
You'd be all right though, because you'd get your proper derby against Millwall if you do go down.
I'm not sure Westfield would feel the same, but
I thought you was going to say I'm not sure Millwall won't come up. Guys, pleasure. We'll have both of you back on again before this season finishes. Dara, where can everyone follow you on the Bird app, mate?
At the Tinkerman on Twitter.
Good man. And yourself, Chris?
I always get it wrong way around.
FPL _ Sky Addict.
That's it.
I've got it. I nearly let you escape as well. Dara, correct score prediction for the game, please, mate.
Ooh. I'll say 2-1 Fulham.
Good man. Chris?
I'm going to be ambitious and say 2-1 West Ham.
Good lads. Well done. I keep escaping from giving my own predictions lately, so I won't bottle it this time. I'm going to say 1-0 Fulham. Feels like that to me, actually. Clash of Correspondents next week, guys. Be next Thursday, almost definitely. And it's my team. Ricky Saunders is back on with Neil Grover to preview the game week 31 fixture between Tottenham and Bournemouth, where everyone will realise the closer it gets that they probably don't want to captain Harry Kane. I'll be back with Deadline Stream on the Planet FPL YouTube channel at 10 a.m. UK time on Saturday morning. Just leaves me to say thank you so much again to Dara and to Chris. Good luck to you both, gents. Cue music, please, man, shall we?